Okay, I'm coming. I'm coming. Here we go. Okay, yet another adventure in looking at what to shoot for stock and what are going to be money-making categories based on history, based on looking back at when these stock market books that were put out. I don't think they're doing them anymore. They were put out through the 90s and earlier. Represented very sizable, expensive stock agencies to put these out, but back then they might get thousands of dollars off a single photo, so it could pay off for them. In looking at it, looking at their categories, looking at ideas for what's in it, and for how much they invested in each category by pages, believing their return is going to be on that. So looking at that, the idea today that those same categories, good chance they'll also be money makers today. So the next two that I'm working on or have here are industry and environment. Industry had 20 pages, environment had 4 pages. Okay, industry represented everything that wasn't corporate, that was business. So it was kind of a lumped together category, which was really interesting being into that term. I don't think we would use that or think of that today. It's every business where they're doing something or making something. So it's kind of surprising, but it's a fairly good sized category, but it's very, very diverse on what's in this section. It was interesting to find that under transportation, looked at earlier, there wasn't any shipping. Well, they stuck all the shipping under industry. They don't consider it transportation, I guess, or have a different concept of transportation. But this is where I'm finding ships and shipping stuff, ports, loading stuff, offloading stuff, all of that kind of shipping or transportation that occurs by sea is in this section. Today, that's perhaps even more important than ever with the global market of that going on. We're in a unique position in Portland in that we're a seaport, but we're 100 miles inland, which we did have a very active seaport until the unions kind of wiped it out. Also in this category, starting to see a lot of tools. So every kind of tool doing things. They're making things. This is your manufacturing section. Most of it, especially now, is going to have to be more refined high-tech because all of the labor-intensive, simple manufacturing has been pretty well moved overseas to markets that have lower labor cost and lower regulations on it, slave markets. So they're making things, found chemistry in here, a lot of people on the job actually doing something, every kind of small business. So that would not represent corporate starts to show up here. A whole variety of things that fall into any kind of small business. You've got your clean rooms going on here. Welding seemed to be a very popular theme back then, that they loved having all the sparks flying, made for a good photograph. You have your conveyor belts, moving things, and of course was in warehouse. That, of course, still really good, especially with online ordering and then shipping and delivery. A lot of these warehouses, I know they just built a new Amazon thing here in Portland, and I'm sure it's going to have miles and miles of conveyor belts, things moving around. It's a key symbol that I think is going to come in for representing that part of the shipping part of that market. You had cranes building, lifting, moving things. They stuck in this retail. They stuck wholesale. They stuck customer service. All got stuck in industry. Mining is here. So a lot of categories which, heavy industry, which you would normally break out from light manufacturing, and then retail wholesale would get broken out. They just went through and just plunked it all in there. So that's why they got a big 20-page on this area. Firefighting got put in here. So this is just a whole thing. Everything around business, everything around commerce happened back then, still happening today. You just have to see what businesses are out there, what opportunities you have to go in working with them. I've immediately found around this area that it's pretty unrepresented. It isn't what people want to go out and do or understand on it. Started seeing that there's interesting opportunities. A lot of people just think all business, all this is bad. But if you go in with more of an approach that these are people trying to make a living, trying to build their dream, I think it gives a whole different view or base to create images to fulfill that. Okay, the last 4 pages, or the next section, is environment. This part is kind of interesting. We basically knew about environmental issues, and this was 40 years ago. And they were just starting to put some of this out. So I had 4 pages on this. This kind of represented environmental disasters. And now we've got even more of that going on. We've had some rules put in here in the States to get rid of the 3 Mile Island things and stuff like that. But overseas, I think this is, again, thinking globally, there's probably more of an interest in that. We're seeing a lot of the plastics all on the beaches, inside of fish. A lot of places it's turning up. It's going to be more and more environmental issues. They have things with recycling here, and with the idea that, if you just recycle, everything will be okay. Well, China just cut us off from recycling. We have no secondary plan, which is nuts, especially for plastics. You can do a lot with that. Fortunately, things like glass is still a good recyclable. But that just starts in, and again, I think that's only 4 pages of this, but I think that's going to be a bigger growing area. And I've seen things around where different stock agencies or other entities are doing things with contests about show us your environmental disasters, or show us your climate change. And climate change is going to be all part of this. And I think that's going to be an ongoing growing area, and one to visually to represent and get ahead of and to understand on it. I think we're just kind of in the early days where that's going to be coming up more, and it's going to be forcing all the other industries and forcing all the other big businesses to pay attention, because we're on a small planet, and our atmosphere is micro thin when you look at it from space. And the seas seem endless, but they're not. And I think all that's is just starting to sink in. And I think there's going to be a greater call for images as this becomes more of a point. As corporate has to go through and start addressing this because consumers will demand it, the world will have to start addressing this more. So I think that's going to be a good ongoing topic to work with, an ongoing category to work within. And the same thing, I got to look at what I've got better access to. You know, what for me, being in this marketplace, but thinking globally, but having to shoot and act locally, how can I go through and visually portray this and get that into stock to work with? So a couple more categories, and hopefully you found that of interest. I am certainly learning a heck of a lot myself going through this. And as kind of a side note, I find this very fascinating because my degree is in cultural anthropology. And so it's really interesting to see how the culture has changed over that 30-year period and what has gone on. It would make a great thesis for somebody to go through and go back through stock photos 40 years ago, because it's just visually going to show you how culture shift may be happening. And without even getting into cultural engineering, it would be a case where you could see how through pressures and things, cultural engineering is taking place, and also how it's being resisted. So a little side note on that. But anyways, if you've found this helpful, hopefully it was good for you, and I will thank you for watching.